The offline qualifier is upon us for MLG Columbus, which is the next major and will be at the end of March. And there's 16 teams at the qualifier. Obviously, the 8 teams awaiting them in the major were the top 8 of the previous major, DreamHack Cluj-Napoca. And the 16 teams who've made it here to the offline qualifier will battle in 4 groups of 4 teams, with the top 2 from each group qualifying for the major. So there's only group stage, there's no playoffs. If you're top 2, you get through to the major. And so it's very much, you're only playing against maximum, well, you can actually only play against the teams in your group, essentially. So the 4 groups, I'm going to go through each of the teams in the groups. I'm going to go through the matchups that we know for the first round, and then I'm going to kind of predict overall who I think will get out of the groups and make it to the major, which will be MLG Columbus at the end of March, like I say, in the Nationwide Arena, which is where the Columbus Blue Jackets play in the NHL. So it will be interesting to see them a major in a big sports stadium like that in the West. So Group A is G2 Esports, formerly Titan, not to be confused with the guys who are now FaZe. It's Flipside Tactics, the Ukrainian team, Selfless, previously Enemy, where Kusta is the star, and Tempo Storm, the second best Brazilian team, who obviously made a lot of news recently by making it to IEM Katowice and DreamHack Malmo over North American teams. So this is a group right off the bat, which is one that has quite a lot of parity in it, where it's very dangerous in terms of who's going to get out in second here. With that said, let's look at the matchups. So Flipside will be playing against Selfless. Now, Flipside is it's the team that has World Edit, Bondik, Markelov, Shara, and Blade. So 4 Ukrainians and a Russian. And this is a team where the best player in the team for me is World Edit. The only problem with him is he's like a stable good player in terms of he's going to get the AWP, he's going to get some good AWP kills, but he doesn't tend to just take over games, especially not against better teams. And he's the best player, but he's also the best player in a way that's a little bit underwhelming. Like he doesn't just blow the doors off like Simple used to when he was in Flipside. The second best player in the team for me is Bondik because he's a pretty solid player. But again, he's not like a star player in a world sense. He's just a decent player. This is a team which has had its T-side issues recently, which is surprising because Blade, the in-game leader, is actually a legend within the CIS region. Goes way back to the team that made it in Amazing Gaming to a bronze medal at World Cyber Games 2007 in 1.6. He's also known to be a very structured in-game leader. When Hiko played with him, he told me they have this advanced system where they call out positions on the map based on like a grid that's laid over the map and positional locations within it. So it's very different to normal teams in their callouts, but they've been having their T-side struggles. Markelov, who's currently a support player in the team, his main job is Fugly Styles to stay alive within the round and extend the round, especially on CC side, is actually someone who used to be one of the best players of all time in 1.6, but has struggled to ever be a star component beyond his first sort of 9 months or so in CSGO. Now, interestingly, at Ace of Predator Masters Season 2 finals recently, he actually had a particularly strong performance over the tournament, but then couldn't play in the final due to his visa and having to leave. Shara has been fairly underwhelming in this team. I feel like he's the guy who hasn't really contributed much and has had his difficulties in the few lands he's played with them. So, Flipside, they are going against Selfless, the former Enemy team. Now, Enemy is all essentially about Kusta. Kusta was playing this, he only played a few NA lands, but he hard carried at these lands and they won the major primarily off the back of his MVP performance. He was a big time performer, admittedly only against North American teams and people like Renegades, etc. But he's been a big time performer rather against North Americans. He is clearly the number one rising NA talent in terms of the unproven guys and looks very legit in how he does it. Wins clutches, puts up big AWPing performances, looks like a strong player. Obviously, he's only going to be playing in this tournament and then in the major if they were to qualify, and then he's in Liquid now. So this is like his last hurrah in terms of this team, and it's all on his back for them to have any chance. Beyond Kusta, the other players are Mainline, Relics, Lucky, and Uber. I've seen Uber have some performances that were decent on LAN. I think he's a decent player, but overall, this is like the Kusta show. Now, the thing about Selfless versus Flipside is that it's actually the likely maps that there's a chance to see them on is probably Train, Overpass, and Inferno. I'm pretty certain that Flipside, Blade will do his homework and he will just outright ban Cache, because Cache is a map that Flipside haven't been strong on anyway, and it is by far the strongest map for the Enemy guys. So Blade will do his homework, he'll get Cache out of there, and as a result we'll end up on something like a Train, like an Overpass, like an Inferno. I actually think looking at it, that overall, this is going to be a win for Flipside. I know people want to believe that Kusta's going to go crazy, he's going to be awesome. I actually don't think he will be. So what I'm interested to see instead is Kusta versus World Edit. I want to see these two guys AWPing, and I want to see how they do it. Overall, I think Flipside's going to have a bit better tactics, they're going to have a better team overall, man for man, and they've got a lot more experience. And I think unless Kusta is really exceptional, it will be best of one, so he could do it. I think that overall, he won't be significantly better than World Edit in this game to be a deciding factor, and I think Flipside as a team will win this game. The other matchup in the group in the first round is G2 versus Tempo Storm. Now, with the way this is going to go, G2 is obviously Shocks, Scream, RPK, Smiths, and Existence. They should be a lock to get out of this group, I feel. I feel like they've got the quality and the experience, and they have shown increasingly better performances since the major where they had their issues and didn't get out of the group due to that shocking loss to NIP. They're a team where, first and foremost, you have to talk about the Shocks factor. Shocks is not a top 10 player in the world anymore, but he can every now and then have that map performance or even a tournament performance where he's getting back to that. He doesn't tend to do it over a whole tournament, but he'll have a few maps in a tournament where he's back at that top 10 performance. And you remember the old Shocks, you remember that amazing AK, and you see that strong play on the pistol rounds. Like we know, good clutcher, good with pistols, good with AK. That's Shocks, right? Well, he's someone where we saw him have one of these maps recently when they had this nice run in Barcelona to finish top 3, because he had this monster Dust 2 game against Astralis where he just went ham. It was old school classic Shocks on Dust 2, and as a result he was able to carry the game and they were able to win this match. Beyond Shocks, you look down the team, Scream had a big performance at Game Show, but has been fairly underwhelming at otherwise and hasn't had any consistency, so it's hard to predict that will happen, and that's the problem for G2. It's not certain Shocks can play at a world-class level, but he's there more regularly than anyone else. Beyond that, it's the firepower is the problem. Now, this is where they've made up for it recently in very weird fashion, because RPK has still been fairly underwhelming. Smiths has started to come out of the slump he was in ever since toward the end of the Envious era for him, and actually the player amazingly who's really come to a higher level of fragging is Existence. Existence has been fragging pretty decently. I mean, especially considering he's an in-game leader and people always talk shit on his fragging. This guy's had 2 30-plus frag performances on Overpass in games at the last few tournaments. One against Astralis, I think it was Game Show, and the one against Vexed in Barcelona. So, amazingly, in terms of the fragging, you feel like Shocks, he's got to be very good for them to be certain to get out the group. But then beyond that, they've got a bunch of areas they can go in here. Scream can certainly have the skill to be the second fragger. If not, Existence can do it more recently, amazingly. And actually, the overall level of fragging in the team's been much better than you would expect before. And they've expanded their map pool. If you look at the Tempo Storm, guys, the problem for Tempo Storm is, with this lineup, we haven't seen them on LAN. At big tournaments, like, okay, Max 5, etc. The big addition to this team, they brought in Phelps and Bolts, and obviously Bolts is the player who was in Luminosity. Now, Bolts wasn't an impressive player in Luminosity, but he's been going ham in this team, actually. He's really improved a lot. He's become quite strong in this lineup. But this team, the star player is Henny, the AWPer, the in-game leader. He's been by far the star player, and it feels like he's the guy who has to carry this game very much. He's the Kusta of NME to the Tempo Storm as it was. He has to be the carry in this game to get them over G2. Bolts has been doing strong. Aside from that, though, the big question is, can they do it on LAN? Because, yeah, they did it in the qualifiers in NA, but those are online matches, and we saw they had Luminosity behind them for the IM one. So I want to see, when they're on LAN, when they don't have Fallen, what happens to them. I'm not sure. In fact, I don't think they're going to win this matchup against G2. Against G2, I look at the overall matchup and I think, right, Inferno and Cobble feel like the maps that we're likely to see here. Train and Overpass, I feel like will be maps that are banned. We won't see them on those. So Inferno and Cobble, it's actually feeling like this is pretty decent for the guys from G2. Mainly, I think the factor here is not only does Henny have to carry Tempo Storm, but there's no super strong AWPer over on the side of G2. So if he does go crazy with the AWP and there's no one to neutralize that aspect, that's where he can have an edge. But even so, barring a great performance from him, I think it's going to be G2 taking this match. So I have a winner's bracket match of Flipside versus G2. I think G2 will win that game. When G2 plays against Flipside, G2 wants maps like Inferno, Train, Overpass, Cobble. These are the maps they want to go towards. You go and you look over at Flipside. They like Train, they like Cobble, they like Overpass, they like Inferno. So it's a matchup. So that's why it's bad for Flipside if they get to play G2, because the maps that they want to play are the maps that G2 wants to play. So G2, I actually think are a lock to get out of this group. And I think they'll be going out in first place. Then you end up with a scenario where in my losers match, I would have Selfless versus Tempo Storm. Now, Selfless, I told you, it has to be cash for them. If not cash, Overpass, Train, this is where they want to be heading. Whereas the problem is, the guys from Tempo Storm can play cash, so maybe they will leave it in and it will be a crazy game there. The main problem I feel like for Tempo Storm is they don't want to play Overpass, and that's a decent map, a solid map for Selfless. So Selfless might get a chance to play Overpass against Tempo, so maybe there's upset potential there. Even so, I think Tempo Storm should be better, barring a crazy Kusta performance. So I think Tempo Storm will win the losers match. So it'll be Tempo Storm against Flipside in the last match of the series to decide who gets the second spot. And Flipside, they want to go towards stuff like Train, Cobble, Overpass. Tempo Storm, don't mind a bit of Cobble. Dust 2 Inferno's where they want to be. So I think we could end up on Cobble there. I think Flipside would take that one. So I have Flipside coming out second. So I've got Gamers 2 coming first, Flipside coming second, Tempo Storm third, and Selfless fourth. That's how I think this one, in terms of Gamers 2 getting out, I think that's a lock. The others are much more variable, but I think Flipside when I look at the maps and the players. Now going over to Group B. Group B is one where I don't think it's as strong as it looks on paper. So it has Mouse Sports, has Team Liquid, has Hellraisers, and has Team YP. YP meaning YouPorn, but they only call YP here because you can't say YouPorn on official streams with Valve. So, Mouse Sports play YouPorn, Team YP. I'll get in the habit of saying that. When Mouse Sports play Team YP, it doesn't matter. Now, Mouse Sports is Nico, Nex, Chris J, Speedy, Dennis. Nico has been the best player since he joined this team. He's a player with a lot of skill. He's also, in theory, like the in-game leader now, I think. Nex is someone who was the star player before Nico joined, but then sort of slumped and fell off a bit, but has gradually been getting his form back, and then at the recent Ace of Predator Masters Season 2, went ham, had a really crazy performance, and got back to that sick level we remember of beforehand when he was in the Mouse of the late summer with God B, where he was by far the star. So it's a good sign for Mouse. They've got some good fragging from Nico and Nex. Their problem is, Chris J is still just the third player at this point in time. He used to be the second player, and that's why they had some issues. At the moment, he's like the third guy, so he can get away with being inconsistent, which he is right now. And unfortunately, I don't know why people get too hyped about him. He's never going to be bad. He's going to be good. In certain matchups, he's going to go off with the AWP, but his style of AWPing, that super fast, re-peaking style, that Makalele style, it's way too inconsistent, and it's a stylistic problem and a skill set problem, so I never expect him to be. But if Nico and Nex go off, he can be an okay third star hybrid to get you the win. And so they've got some firepower here. The problem for them is Speedy's come back and he's just been okay, and Dennis has really dropped off a cliff. Dennis was the guy where he was the guy doing well with Nex and Chris J to give them some more firepower when they were the old God B line before they got Nico. He's been really poor the last few months, and him and Speedy have really had their issues. Now, in terms of Mouse Sports, they want Cash, they want Dust 2, they want Cobble. It's not going to matter in this one. They're going to beat Team YP on any of the maps they play. I don't think it even matters at this time. So I'm expecting them to easily win that matchup. One of the most one-sided matchups in the tournament, I think. Team Liquid plays Hellraisers. Now, Team Liquid is Simple, Nitro, Hiko, Elige, and Adren, because Adren's coming back in to play as the stand-in for Kusta, who can't play because he's going to be playing with Selfless because of how the minor major system works. Now, Simple individually is a fucking monster. I said last year, for me, in terms of skills, he was a top 10 player already. In terms of performances on LAN, he was very good, but he didn't get to play that many LANs against the top-level opponents from the West. Now, the problem obviously is we want to see him prove it as in like player. This isn't top competition in this group, but we want to see him start to prove it more on LAN and show that he's going to be a big monster in Team Liquid specifically. Beyond Simple, Nitro, for me, at the end of the year, it was between Nitro and JDM who the best NA player is. I think Nitro is really strong right now, particularly on certain maps, and he's really found his role as that like second guy in, mixed. He either is first in or second in, depending on what spot he's on the map or what map it is, on what site they're attacking. So he'll play this entry style, and he's been pretty strong at it recently. I think Team Liquid is the roster that should become the best NA team, but at the moment I give the edge to CLG as the best NA team because of performances, because of game show. So I think this team should be a lock to get through in this tournament. The Adren factor has to be said, because Adren was cut, and the only reason he's been brought back is because of the system where it's so hard to get other players to stand in, because they can't play in other minors if they come with Liquid here, and the other players are playing in the major. There's all these problems stopping them getting anyone else. Therefore, they've had to bring Adren back in. So the question now is, will he be resentful? Will he just play under par because he's given up already? He doesn't want to play with this team? You never know in that sense. You don't know what form he's in. So that's the big X factor for me with this team. But they've got so much skill elsewhere in the lineup, I think it's almost certain they're going to get out. I feel like this is a pretty solid one that they're going to be getting out of this group. So when they play against Hellraisers is a team that is Oscar, Zero, Kucha, Angel, and Sticko. Now, Angel and Kucha are the two long-time members of this team, but they fell off a long time ago in CSGO. In early CSGO, both were doing pretty decently, and Kucha was pretty good early on in CSGO, but I have to say, over the whole of CSGO, I've never understood the hype around Kucha. He used to get hype in Astana Dragons and the early Hellraisers. I thought he was already dropped up. I think he was already a fairly underwhelming player at that point in time. These two were playing particularly poor recently, even though at the last tournament, Angel had like a little bit of a renaissance, but nothing special. For me, this team is carried by Oscar. Oscar, within the Czech Republic, was a legend in 1.6. He was a very skilled player. There's a great movie out there of him, but he never got a chance on big teams. He's the strongest player right here. He's been a good pickup for them. He was very good at the minor. So he's the player I expect to have a chance to carry here. Problem is, he's going up against Team Liquid. So there's not, even though there's some like skills here, the consistency of the firepower isn't there for Hellraisers. Now, in terms of what Hellraisers want, they want Dust 2, Overpass, Cobble and Inferno, they don't mind. Then you look at what Team Liquid want. Team Liquid wants Cash, Overpass, Inferno, Dust 2. So as a result, we've got some matchups here. This is I'm having to go, by the way, on the stats of the old Liquid here, obviously, because we've only seen the new Liquid a bit online. Now, online, Liquid's been rolling Dust 2 Cash, so they're still liking those maps. They haven't, though, interestingly enough, played much Overpass, which was a very strong map for the old lineup. They haven't played much Inferno, which was a strong map for the old lineup. So as a result, Dust 2 and Cash, it feels like what they want to go towards. Well, Dust 2 is a map that Hellraisers want, so we could see that. We could see a Dust 2, we could see an Overpass. I think it doesn't matter here. I think what's going to happen is it's going to be Overpass, maybe Dust 2, maybe Cobble. I don't think any of them should matter. Neither of them's going to want to play Train and Mirage. In fact, I think Team Liquid, if they're smart, even though they're good on Dust 2 right now, they could win anyway on Dust 2, but why risk it? If I were them, I would just ban Dust 2 and then get to Overpass or Cobble. These are strong maps. You will win. And I think Team Liquid will beat Hellraisers. Mouse Sports will beat Team YP. So winner's bracket match. We'll have Mouse Sports versus Hellraisers. Now, Mouse Sports want to play Cash, want to play Dust 2. I just told you that's what Team Liquid's rolling on. So I think there's a good chance, believe it or not, that unless Mouse, if I'm Mouse here, I actually might try gambling a ban on Cash and saying I don't want to play that because I saw how good Nitro is in it. Because I think if it is Cash or Dust 2, it's going to be a Team Liquid win. And we saw how crazy Nitro was on Cash. So I think Team Liquid is a lock. They get out of this group in first. I think actually, in the losers match, when Hellraisers play YP, Hellraisers will win that. So it'll be Hellraisers versus Mouse in the decider for the last spot. And when Hellraisers play Mouse, the big problem is not quite enough firepower on Hellraisers, and they want to they want to get onto a Dust 2, they want to get on an Overpass. And I don't think Mouse is going to let that happen. Mouse don't mind playing Dust 2, they can play Overpass. So I think Mouse is going to win that. It's going to be Team Liquid first, Mouse Sports second, Hellraisers third, Team YP fourth. Group C is Counterlogic Gaming, Vexed Gaming, Splice, who are replacing the Mongols, who couldn't attend because of visa issues, and SK Gaming. Now, in the first matchup, we have SK Gaming versus Vexed. And SK Gaming is Asilian, Modi, Magic's Boy, Magic's, I don't know how you say that, Magic's Boy, Pimp, and Freeze. Now, Asilian and Modi have really had their issues in this SK lineup. They haven't been able to put any kind of consistency in their fragging. They've been they've been consistently poor. There you go. Even though Modi in early CSGO was very good, and at the end of 1.6 was an elite level superstar player. Magic's Boy has had good maps here and there, such as at Fragment Masters, but overall, I found him a little bit underwhelming, not impressive enough for how much the hype around him was when he did have those good maps. It wasn't there map to map, and it wasn't there over whole tournaments. The best players in this team for me at the moment is Pimp and Freeze. Pimp started to get his shit back together after he came over from Dignitas, and Freeze has had enough decent maps that I think he's a solid player. So this is an okay team. Obviously, they've had some good maps when they had the Cadian lineup, and so as a result, people are looking for them as an upset potential here, which is certainly possibly the case. They're a team who want to play Cash, Overpass, Mirage. Beyond that, they haven't got a whole lot of strength in maps. There's really three maps, Cash, Overpass, Mirage, they have to get to. Cash was what they beat Team Question Mark on, now Astralis on at Fragment Masters. They beat Mirage. They beat Team Question Mark on Mirage as well, and they beat Luminosity, very good team right now, at DreamHack Leipzig on Mirage. So Mirage and Cash particularly, two maps they want to go towards. So you go over and you look at Vexed, and Vexed is the team where they're the second best Polish team, but their problem is they've had to come with a stand-in, because they couldn't bring Hyper, who in many ways I thought was one of their best players, certainly one of their top two players, and so they've had to bring Oscarish, formerly of CSGO Lounge. So their lineup is Rallen, Furlan, Grubby, Repo, and Oscarish. Now, like I said, Oscarish, actually in CSGO Lounge, by the way, hasn't been very impressive. He had a lot of hype around him, didn't really manage to show it on land much. So that's already a downgrade to bring him instead of Hyper. So Rowland has been pretty decent in this team. Repo, one of the newer players, who's only played like 3 lands with them, has been particularly underwhelming. He hasn't got a lot done. And Grobby, who's been there quite a long time in this land, I've got to admit, in the last few lands has been playing like total shit. So I think this lineup's really going to suffer from skill and firepower, and playing against SK is not going to be good. Now, in terms of maps, they want to play Cache, Overpass, Mirage. Well, you can see right there the problem. Those are the 3 maps that SK want. So as a result, I think it's pretty likely we're going to end up on one of those maps. And then as a result, SK is going to win. Both of them love Mirage, by the way. So it's even possible we can see them on Mirage, and that actually could be a good game in terms of it's the best map for both teams. I think SK is certain to win this. We won't see Dust 2. We won't see Train. It will be an SK victory. The other matchup is going to be Splice Gaming versus versus CLG, Counter Logic Gaming. So, Splice. Splice is the lineup that has Arya, Professor Chaos, Davey, Jason R, and Abe. Now, of the team, Arya is the best player, I think. I think he was a decent player in the teams I've seen him play in the past. Decent being the key word. Davey is okay. I've seen some alright stuff from him. Wasn't that bad at the World Championship. Professor Chaos and Jason, I think have certainly had their problems in this lineup. Haven't been very good. And this team in general is playing a lot of Dust 2, Inferno, Mirage, Cache. Those are the 4 maps you really want to see them towards, particularly Dust 2, Inferno. Now, they're playing against CLG. CLG is JDM, Tariq, Fugly, the new man, Cutler, and Hazed. Now, JDM's the star player. For me, he's tied with Nitro for the best NA star player right now. He's particularly good with the AWP, obviously, not very good with rifles. Been putting up very consistent performances and has been an all-round good player overall. It's only really the top European teams that tend to fluster him. Tariq is always very good against NA teams, so I think he's going to be good here, but against European teams, notably goes absent. Interestingly, Peter taking over as the in-game leader, their coach, has freed up Cutler a bit. He's been coming back to form a bit. And so as a result, it feels like those are the 3 firepower guys, JDM, Tariq, Cutler, and then Hazed and Fugly. They haven't done well statistically, but Cutler's been, Fugly rather, has been doing a decent job in the lurking role, staying alive. And Hazed is he's always been the supportive player anyway, and he's going to set other guys up. So actually, I think they're the best NA team currently, on current performance. Now, when they play against Splice, I told you, Splice probably wants to play Dust 2, Inferno, maybe Mirage. Well, you go in and you look, CLG, Mirage is what they want. That's really their best map. They are a legit international team on Mirage. They want to play Train. They want to play Overpass. So I think if you're the guys on Splice, you've got to ban out Mirage here. You can't allow it to go towards that. That should be 100% a ban. As a result, they have differing map pools then. They don't share a lot outside of Mirage. So I think if Splice is intelligent, it's going to go more towards something that's going to be a bad map for both. Now, or Splice says, you know what, fuck it, we play Mirage as well. We'll play you on Mirage and we'll just play one of our better maps, in which case they will get smashed by CLG. Now, if they risk it and they go towards one of the maps where it's going to be like some toss-up middle map for the two, CLG is still going to beat them. It's not a problem for me. They've got so much more. They've got the best player. They've got the best players. They've got a much better lineup. They've got more experience. It's going to be an easy win for CLG here. So the winner's match for me is going to be SK Gaming versus CLG. Now, when these two teams play each other, SK Gaming, I've said, Cache, Overpass, Mirage. That's where they want to be. Well, I told you, you can't play Mirage against CLG. So SK better have it in mind immediately that we're getting that the fuck out of here. As a result, I think there's a decent chance this game will take place on Overpass, where, remember, CLG recently beat Envious twice, who admittedly weren't an Overpass team, but are still an extremely strong team. So as a result, I think we have a chance to see us on Overpass. It could be a good game, but I think CLG are going to take it. I have CLG as a lock to get out the group in first place. So then, in the losers match, we have Vexed versus Splice. Now, I don't think it matters in this sense. Vexed has got more experience. They've got the better players overall. I think Vexed is going to win that game. So it'll be SK versus Vexed in the last game to get out of the group. I think overall, I've just realised, by the way, that the final game, the decider, is actually a best of 3. So this is Group C now. I will actually loop around at the back and I'll just double check that for the last game where it's the best of 3, that doesn't change any factors. I've just remember I've been considering it as though it was a best of 1, but I'll remember it for this one. So when SK plays Vexed in a best of 3, I think that SK is going to win this actually. Not least because we're going to see stuff like, well, I already went through this before. SK plays Vexed, and they all like the same 3 maps. So it's going to be great for SK. SK should get through in second. I actually think it will be CLG first, SK second, Vexed third, and Spy fourth. I'll loop back, remember, on the other 2 groups for the final game at the end. The fourth group is going to be Cloud9, Dignitas, Gambit, and Renegades. And we're going to have Dignitas versus Renegades first of all. Dignitas is Kirby, Config, Rubino, MSL, and Tensky. Now, the thing about Dignitas, they've got good tactics. They're one of the better probably the best tactical team in this tournament. They've got their Cobble specialists. They are really one of the best teams in the world on that map. Kirby has been emerging as a star player, like one of the better players in Europe, like a top 15 type player in Europe when he's had a couple of good tournaments here. Config had one really good tournament, but then actually hasn't ever managed to have his big tournament at the same time as Kirby. So in terms of the firepower, they could have two good firepower players, but they haven't had it at the same time so far. Rubino, since he joined, has just been solid. So they've got a decent fragging lineup there. Those three can definitely put up good numbers against most teams. And then Tensky and MSL are more towards the supportive end. MSL sometimes even AWPing. So as a result, I think they're a solid team. And I actually think that they're going to do pretty well in this group. Now, the maps they want is Cobble, Inferno, Mirage, especially Cobble, obviously. Now, you go over and you look at the team they're going to play, which obviously will be Renegades. And Renegades is a team that's just changed a player, where they brought in Ustillo instead of Havoc. Now, JKS and Azza are the stars. JKS is like a mid-round player who can win the clutches, the most skilled player, I think. Azza's got good aim, takes duels, can put up frags, but has only just started to continue his evolution into becoming more of a solid LAN player and doing it more against European and international players, which he is doing, and he's the second best player for me as a result in terms of the impact he'll have. But he does open up sites, and he will be fairly fearless in taking duels. Now, Yam should always have been the third best player on the team and should have been able to contribute big frags as the main AWPer, but with Havoc, he seemed limited. He didn't even AWP all the time. So hopefully, Ustillo joining and being more of a role player is going to unleash Yam more, like we saw in a couple of online games. If that happens, now you've got some fragging. You've got three fraggers that can get some work done for you with Renegades. Maybe you can go head-to-head with Dignitas. The problem for the Renegades guys with the old lineup was they really needed a good T side. They didn't have like super solid CT sides, so they really needed that like solid bunch of T rounds, 7-8 rounds to be able to get those wins. Now, they're a team where their maps, on paper, they were good on Mirage, but they were manning at them all themselves. They weren't playing it much. They don't like it. And they didn't have that many of their wins on it. Cash, Inferno are really the maps that they want to play on. Beyond that, they can play a bit of Train, a little bit of Cobble, but they want to get to Cash and Inferno. So when you look at it all together, you go over, the guys from Dignitas love Inferno. They love Cobble as well. So what will happen there? I think Renegades, if they're smart, it should be 100% a Cobble ban. So, as a result, we end up in a world where Renegades should ban Mirage. Should ban Cobble, I think, personally. Because, no, actually, yeah, that doesn't make sense. No, because here's the problem. You're obviously not going to get that many bans. So here's the problem, is that Renegades with the old lineup always banned Overpass and Mirage. Particularly Overpass, but also Mirage. So if they want to ban one of those two, they're going to be in trouble here, because then Cobble can go right out for the Dignitas guys. They nearly always ban Overpass, so you feel like they'll probably be scared enough to ban that. RNG want to go to a Cash, but Dignitas don't. I think the chances are we can get Cobble if Dignitas has the opportunity, and they will win that certainly. Otherwise, we could end up on Inferno Mirage. And again, I'm liking it for Dignitas here. I think Dignitas will win. So I think this is a clear win for Dignitas, in my opinion. Gambit plays C9 otherwise. And Gambit is Moo and Dosia and Adren, who were all members of Hellraisers in the past. Waylander, the Finnish guy who played for Pitta, that team that were at ESL Katowice offline qualifier for 2015. And had that overtime game, or I think it was on Cash, against Titan. And Hooch is a long-time Russian player, going right back to like 2004, 2005. Legendary player. And so this is a team where Moo is the hard carry player. He's really been putting up big frags. He's one of the best players in Hellraisers towards the end. Dosia, though, who in the early days, the first half of CSGO, was one of the best players in the world, has been improving a lot more and was much improved at the minor and still can have maps where he's pretty strong. Adren has been decent since he's come back to CSGO. The others I haven't seen much from. Wayland hasn't really lived up to the hype, and Hooch has never really been that good in CSGO anyway. They're a team Gambit that want Cash, they want Inferno, they want Cobble. Now, Cloud9, the team they're playing, is Skadoodle, Shroud, Stewie2K, Freakazoid, and Nothing. They've had really big T-side struggles since Nothing took over as the in-game leader. Freakazoid, as a result of that, had a really bad game show statistically, but in terms of his effort and how he tried to have an impact on the game, I still thought he was decent enough at this LAN. Stewie 2K for his first LAN was pretty underwhelming, we have to say. He wasn't some star player. Unfortunately, the biggest problem for C9, in my opinion, has been the struggles of Skadoodle, who at the moment is not even playing like a star player, even considering NA teams, but especially on an international level, has not been close to a star player. Shroud has been the star player still. He's been decent. He's been doing good fragging. He's been one of the few bright spots, along with Freak still playing his role. Nothing has not only been a bad in-game leader, he's been complete shit as an individual player. He was good towards the end of last year against the lesser competition, like the North Americans. He hasn't been good against Europeans for a little while, and he's been terrible since he's been the in-game leader. So they've got a real lack of T-sides and a real lack of overall fragging, and it's all coming down to having good CT halves and having Shroud really put up numbers. That's been what it's mainly been about for C9. That's why they've floundered at their first attempts and not done well online. Now, the guys from C9, they want to play Cash. They want to play Dust 2. They want to play Overpass. They will play Train if they need to. So those 4 maps are really where they want to be. So as a result, you go over, like I said, Gambit wants Cash. They want Inferno. They want Cobble. So we don't have that much of a matchup here except Cash. So as a result, I feel like this is going to be either Cash and both teams agree to play it, in which case I think C9's got a good chance at this, or it's going to be Dust 2, which will be a bit more of a random map. But I have to say, I think overall would still go more towards the guys from C9. So as a result, I think C9 is going to win this match. I know that Moo and Doshia can have an impact, and if the fragging isn't there for C9, that could be dangerous. But I think maps-wise, C9's in the clear in this particular matchup. So I've got a winner's bracket matchup of Dignitas versus C9. Now, since the guys from C9 want to play some of those maps I mentioned before, they're going to be in some trouble. Because when they come up against the guys from Dignitas's best maps are all C9's worst maps. So it feels like C9's banning is still going to get them onto a map they don't want. Like, it can still get them towards an Inferno or Mirage, which they don't want any part of. And as a result, I think Dignitas is a lock to get out this group, and they will go out in first place. So then, in the losers match, I have Renegades versus Gambit. Now, I think when Renegades play, they're in a position where they're going to play, they like Cash, they like Inferno. These are maps that Gambit wants to play. I think Renegades will win. Overall, they'll be better. And I think Renegades should get into the decider. Now, the decider, remember, it's a best of 3, will be Cloud9 versus Renegades. And being as Renegades are in a situation where they want to play stuff like Cash, Inferno. Well, we all know that, like I said, C9, Inferno, Mirage, Inferno is way down there. Cash, way up there. So maybe we'll have a Cash game in there. I think if it's a best of 3, we will. We'll have a Cash game in there. It's quite plausible we can have a Dust 2 game in there. Decider could be something like Train. When I look at that overall, that's not terrible for Renegades, actually. But when I look at it overall, Train, I think, is a solid surprise map for C9. 2 of their losses, which are G2, who I think have actually been pretty solid on Train recently. I think overall, C9 will take that in a series. And so I think first place will be Dignitas, second place will be C9, third place will be Renegades, fourth place will be Gambit. I'll now loop back and do Group A and Group B decider match, just in case I didn't consider anything there in terms of what the best of 3 would be. So in Group A, I had the decider match as Flipside versus Tempo. So let me see, Flipside versus Tempo, which would actually be, let me see, we've got Train, Cobble, Overpass for Flipside, and they don't mind a bit of Inferno. They will play it. They can take people close on that. Tempo, Storm, Inferno's something they want. Cobble's something they want. So as a result, Inferno and Cobble, I think, are pretty solid to maybe be the 2 maps there. And then as a decider, probably, let me see, maybe Cash as the decider, Cash Mirage. So as a result, let me see. I think overall, Inferno would be a great map between the 2. That would be the really hot map to watch. And Cobble would be pretty solid. I think I'll still edge it to Flipside. I think Flipside will still take that. In Group B, I had Group B decider matches Mouse Spots versus Hellraisers. Now, Mouse Sports want Cash, Dust 2, Cobble, Hellraisers. They want Cobble, and then Overpass, Dust 2 are also there. So as a result, I feel as though I mean, I said before they share the 3 maps, so actually that will be a whitewash. Mousesports should wreck that 2-0. So actually it doesn't change anything. So overall, I have at the end of the day, these teams going to the major. I have Group A, I've got G2 and Flipsider going there. In Group B, I've got Team Liquid and Mouse are going there. So far we're getting all the teams that actually were at the last major. In Group C, I've got CLG and SK going there. So another major team, but then SK getting in as a surprise. And then Group D, I've got Dignitas and C9. So actually, yeah, more teams who were at the last major. So actually, there's my tournament overall. Now then, if you want to qualify for Major Skrilla, play at Alpha Draft, where you can play CSGO contests and you can play for fun. You can be selfless and just have fun and donate Skrilla to others. You can try your own unique gambit by taking in some players that are more unexpected. Maybe take some of these players that people don't think are so good, but you know there's some good value there. Raise hell with a few swaggy picks here and there. Don't coaster yourself the chance to get cash, though.